welcome to this edition of the Collins Cafe, the Movember edition. We're a couple of days past November, but, in the spirit of it, because you have to keep this Men's Health Month going year round. We pushed it into December, and I've got a great guest here today. I've got Greg Oliva from Movember, which is the leading charity dedicated to changing the face of men's health. Welcome, Greg. Glad to have you with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And although we are a few days past the end of mustache season, you're exactly right. Men's health is something we are focused on year round, and I'm really pleased to be here with you today.
Okay, excuse me for 1 second. Let me just lean over here. I need to grab something real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'm back. If you don't recognize me, ladies and gentlemen, it's still me, Andre Collins, but my mustache has a mind of its own, but it's kind of doing its thing right now. But I wanted to honor the mustache with this fancy blue mustache this afternoon here in Washington, D.C. How's it look, Greg?
Oh, I think it looks fantastic. We've got an expression here, however you mow will save a bro. And I think you are right on the right track.
There you go. But I'll take it off for this interview. So what's the origin of the story and the mission, and why the signature mustache for Movember?
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, Movember is the leading charity dedicated specifically to men's health. We focus on key cause areas affecting men's health every day: prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and mental health and suicide prevention. The start of Movember, it's actually a pretty funny story. It started as a lot of good things do. Two friends enjoying a beer in a bar. And they started talking about bringing the mustache back. It had gone out of fashion. This was back in 2003 in Melbourne, Australia. They talked a couple of their friends into growing a mustache and created a campaign around men's health and, at the time, prostate cancer. They designed the rules of Movember, which actually are still in place today. You start the month clean shaven, grow your mustache throughout the course of the month. And the following year found 30 guys to take up the challenge, and at that time made the largest donation ever to the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia. Fast forward nearly 20 years, many millions of mustaches later, we are the leading charity with operations in over 20 different countries. And couldn't do the work we do without the support of so many incredible Mo Bros and Mo Sisters around the world.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, I know you have an office, you're in LA, and I know you have an office in New York, but where else around the world? And how does the impact differ globally in the different parts of the world?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we do have a presence in more than 20 countries. We're headquartered in Melbourne, Australia, but do have an office in London, also in Toronto, Canada. And then, as you mentioned, a couple offices here in the United States, and then a few satellite offices around the rest of the world. In terms of how impact differs, we have programs that are both global and local in nature. And so, in any different country, you will be benefiting from programs that are accessible globally. A good example of that is the biomedical research that we fund. That helps us understand prostate, testicular cancer better. Helps us develop new treatments. So those are programs that really have a global impact. We focus on bringing the best researchers together from across the country. You can look at information, tools, and resources that we have. Consider our True North program. It's an online digital health tool. Movember Conversations, an online tool that helps men navigate difficult conversations. I know we'll talk about it in a bit, but oftentimes men we know don't feel like they have the right vocabulary to have challenging conversations around mental health. We have clinical quality registries. Here in the United States, we have a number of programs specifically focused on the mental health of young men and boys through our Making Connections portfolio. Those are localized programs, so community-led coalitions focusing on men and young boys who are at particularly high risk of struggling with their own mental health. We work with local coalitions to bring them the support and the resources that they need. So what's really amazing about Movember is it has that global piece, but it is very much a grassroots local organization. Since 2003, we've funded over 1,250 initiatives globally and locally.
Wow, that's fantastic. So in your research, do you have a research partner, or do you just kind of pick and choose depending on what cities you're in?
Yeah, we have tons of research partners. So it often depends on the nature of the program that we're funding. We have an entire programs division that assesses and allocates funds that are raised
Mm-hmm.
by our community to have the biggest impact on men's health.
Okay. Now this next piece, this is a little bit interesting, and maybe some women and some men might think this is a little bit nasty, but the Mohair Suit. What's the story behind this suit, and what has the response been? Because I've seen this suit, and it's a beautiful suit, but then the thought about wearing a suit made of mustache and beard hair, I get a little itchy. But tell me about this suit and what's the meaning behind it?
Yeah, and to be honest, you and me both. It's quite an interesting activation that we coordinated, and it was led out of Australia. But for the fourth year in a row, one of the leading Australian menswear companies, Politics, partnered with Movember, and they did so through this Politics Movember Mohair Suit. We collaborated with an artist locally there who actually had lost her husband to prostate cancer in 2016, and so. The design of the suit was really, one, we know fashion is a statement, right? And so you can make a statement, certainly an itchy statement, by putting together a suit entirely composed of facial hair shavings. But more importantly, I think it was a great way for this artist to honor her husband. If you look at the stories and the media that she did, she mentions he loved a snappy suit, right? And he often grew an impressive mustache, and this was a way to recognize and honor him and recognize the many mustaches of men all over the world. So the response, I think there are two camps, right? There are the folks who say, wow, what a great idea. And then there's the other folks who say, you've got to be kidding me. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. So I think I fall somewhere in the middle. I actually don't know where that suit is right now. So hopefully it doesn't get lost and doesn't pop up somewhere where might get a little itchy.
Well, I think, somewhere in the middle is probably just about right, but it is a great idea and it has gotten a lot of attention. Sad that you don't know where the suit is or what the plans for this suit might be in the future, but let's move on. So speaking of collaborations, you recently teamed up with the iconic sports brand Lamborghini. So what's the thought behind putting mustaches on these expensive cars?
Yeah. So at Movember, we're always looking to activate and team up with partners who can elevate our brand and raise awareness of key men's health issues around the world. And what better brand to do so than with Lamborghini, who has incredible brand recognition. And so, as you mentioned, more than 1,500 Lamborghinis paraded the streets of major cities all across the world this past Movember. Nearly 100 showrooms joined in support. Here in the United States, there was over 600 cars. Los Angeles, New York, Miami, so many different cities participating and having these, it was called the Movember Bull Run, is what Lamborghini described it as. And it was actually the largest global rally in the company's history. And really, we see a lot of value in how can we identify brands that have a huge global following and team up with them to raise the profile of Movember and men's health. And Lamborghini was incredibly generous and supportive in the way in which they did that. And we look for partners all the time that can do something similar. We want to start conversations, and at the end of the day, we want people to be talking about men's health, talking about the important issues that men face in their lives every day, both physically and mentally. And by slapping mustaches on these incredibly beautiful cars, we are able to start those conversations around the world. And that's what really can change people's lives, is having those important conversations.
Yeah, and that's a nice segue into the tough stuff. So what is it? What has Movember learned about, why men have such a hard time, sharing, talking about health, their own health, and being vulnerable in that space? What has Movember learned? And, how can you help us men?
Yeah. And that's an incredibly important question. And we know that suicide and mental health are really complex problems, right? And every individual has unique factors influencing them. We've learned that for men in particular, there are certain situational stressors. Consider unemployment, financial distress, becoming a father, we know, relationship breakdown. All of these can combine with what historically is a lack of social connection and isolation to significantly increase the risk for men of suicide. And so we also know that a lot of men might not necessarily feel super comfortable or know exactly how to approach difficult conversations with people in their lives. And so we're working really hard to change that. We know that factors contributing to suicide and poor mental health can be modified. We focus primarily in prevention and early intervention, which means we can develop these interventions that can help address them. So we fund programs that help men stay mentally and emotionally healthy, build strong connections. We know, strong social connections are good for your health. There's a lot of science behind that. We encourage men to talk openly and take action early. We run a lot of health promotions campaigns to help give men the tools they need to be there for their friends during their tough times. One that I love, and you can check out on Movember.com. It's called Be a Man of More Words. And it really focuses on how can we as men be there for one another? How can we find the right language and the right vocabulary? How can we identify when the men in our lives might not be acting in ways that they typically do? Consider, if you're a member of a flag football team, someone stops showing up. If someone's usually the king of the group chat and they're dead silent in the group chat, what are these indicators that we can look out for, and what kind of conversations can we have with them so that we can better identify and be there to support one another?
Yeah, that's great. And, for our player community and the people on this call that serve our players, we know that the spouses and significant others are so important to our player community. A lot of times, they're the drivers of our players, going out and seeking the help that they need. So what's a Mo sister, and how can my wife become one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And absolutely, you don't need to grow a mustache to get involved. Anyone can participate in Movember. And we know, to your point, everyone has men in their lives that they care about. And we ask those folks to, encourage those men to think about their health. So we have what's called our Move Challenge. During the month of Movember, we encourage anyone to run or walk 60 miles throughout the course of the month. That is representative and in honor of the 60 men who take their own lives every hour around the world. A truly striking statistic if you let that sink in. A man takes his own life every minute globally. I mean, that's just an incredible loss of life. And in particular, we know suicide affects young men. So loss of young life. And so, the Move Challenge is a great way to get involved, to stay physically active. Folks host events, whether it's a virtual event, as we've had to lean into over the last 2 years, or events in person. There's great ways to actually bring your community together, to sign up on Movember.com and fundraise without having to grow the mustache. We've actually just rolled out another fourth way to participate, Mow Your Own Way. It's sort of a choose your own adventure challenge where, we've had a guy this year who just set the world record here in the United States for the most consecutive naked skydives, raising money for Movember. He jumped out of a plane over 60 times in a row, completely naked, and raised thousands of dollars in support of men's health. So if there's something that folks are passionate about and want to turn that passion into a fundraiser and a way to raise awareness for men's health, Movember is a great avenue to do it. And there's tons and tons of ways to change the face of men's health.
Yeah, so you're talking about being together together and coming together. Do you find that there's strength in numbers when, you're bringing these groups together? Are men and the people that support men more apt to share and make progress on, their situations?
Absolutely. There is so much science that backs up if men are staying connected and staying healthy. It's one of the things we encourage all men to do, is stay connected and spend time with people who make you feel good. Those social connections are good for you. Becoming more open and discussing your health and the significant moments in your life, that is good for your health. It's good for you mentally. It ends up having a great impact on you physically. And that's, quite frankly, the best part of Movember, in my opinion, is the community that we've been able to build, right? Movember is now made up of hundreds of thousands of community members around the globe who are all passionate about men's health and prostate cancer, testicular cancer, mental health, suicide prevention, but really men's health holistically, right? And when we have a like-minded group of individuals dedicated to making a change, it stops men dying too young. And that's what Movember is designed to do, is to stop men from dying too young.
Yeah, that's really important work that you're doing. And congratulations on that and the dedication to that. So, there's 11 other months in the course of the year. What can we do in a busy life? What can we do to keep this message going, and, give us some different ways that we can support Movember throughout the year?
Sure. Yeah. And so there's actually 5 things we encourage everyone to know and do about men's health. The first one, as we've talked about, stay connected. Spend time with people who make you feel good. It's, whether that's catching up regularly, checking in, making time for them, it's good for your health. The second one we always focus on is talking more. You don't need to be an expert, right? I mean, you don't have to have the sole solution, but listening, being there for someone can truly be life-saving. We have a saying here that talking saves lives. And so the more that we can be there for one another and talk about issues that we're facing, the healthier we will be. Third, know your numbers. We encourage all men at the age of 50 to talk to their doctor about the pros and cons of PSA testing. And if you have a family history of the disease, you should be having that conversation earlier, probably closer to 45. Know your numbers, know your risk, talk to your doctor, and more importantly, go to the doctor. Men typically don't go to their annual checkups. It is not something to be embarrassed about. Every year, schedule that checkup, stay in touch with your doctor, go to your doctor, have those conversations about your health. The fourth one, kind of a cheeky one and something that's pretty on par with our brand. Know thy nuts, right? We focus on testicular cancer as one of our key cause areas. And we encourage all men to know what's normal for their testicles, give them a check regularly, and go to the doctor again if something doesn't feel right. And finally, move more. This is something we can all do, right? Moving, your physical and mental health are closely connected to one another. And so live a physical, get out, exercise, take on physical challenges, know what's right for your body, but those are very connected to, your mental well-being. And so take action that way. We've got tons of ways to participate in Movember throughout the year. Testicular Cancer Awareness Month is in April. We have activations around National Suicide Prevention Day in September, but really, we're having this conversation in December. As I mentioned in the beginning, men's health is a key issue that faces everyone every day, regardless of whether you're a man or not. We've all got important men in our lives, and we'd all be better served if men lived happier, healthier, and longer lives. And Movember's on a mission to do just that.
Yeah, again, very important information. I could tell a lot of really funny jokes in there, but human resources is probably on here, so I won't. So I'll pass on that. But I do want to say, so we want to support your efforts, and we want to, get some stuff, to staff, some of the Mo merch collection. So everyone check in the chat. Leslie's kind of handling that in the chat, the Mo merch. So take a look and see. We might have a few winners. And as we wind down, I just want to say, it's not just about the mustache, and, I've learned a lot in preparation for this call. And, certainly by asking the questions, it's more than just the fun thing with the mustache. You're digging into some very serious health related issues for men, from the prostate cancer to the mental health to just overall mental health. To just overall health, and staying aware of that and getting regular checkups. It's so important. So again, kudos to you all for the work that you do. Are there any questions in the chat? We have a little time, so I'll go to the chat for some questions if that's possible. Are there any questions? Carlton, it's probably okay to open up the microphones if people want to share. If that's not possible, then we'll close out and move on.
Everyone is able to unmute themselves now, so if anyone has a question, they can just unmute themselves and speak to Andre and Greg. Okay,
great. Are there any questions from anyone? If there are, just unmute yourself. I can see your microphones, and we'll dig in. Go ahead, Cheryl. Cheryl, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, Greg, it looks like we don't have any questions. But I think partly because, we were so good at covering it and digging into it, right?
Must be. Well, thank you so much for having me and for your support of our mission. Movember couldn't do the work that we do without, passionate and like-minded individuals So if there are questions that come up after the fact, my name is Greg Oliva. You can reach out to me directly. All the resources and the information that we've discussed today are on Movember.com. You can learn about the impact that we're making on men's health, some of the key statistics. And like I said, if there's a man, in your life that might be struggling with some aspect of their health, Movember is here to support them. We're here to support the loved ones of people who've been affected by these key issues. We've got tools and resources available for those folks as well. So really, we do focus on men's health holistically. I really appreciate your time, Andre. It's been a pleasure. So like I said, thank you for your dedication to our mission. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Hey, and we're so happy to have you today. And, I know we're talking about doing some things in the future. So certainly looking forward to getting together and joining forces in helping to promote your Movember message. Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone, for this edition of the Collins Cafe, signing off from my basement in Arlington, Virginia. See you later.